I'm Emma Tregellis. I'm a rising senior at Duke. I'm from Connecticut, and I am going to be the co-president of the Duke Undergraduate Marketing Club next year.
Hi guys, I'm Caitlin Carter. I'm also going to be the co-president of the Duke Marketing Club with Emma next year. I'm also a rising senior, and I'm originally from Boston.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddy Conway, originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I am a rising second year at the Fuqua School of Business here at Duke, and one of the co-presidents of the Duke MBA Marketing Club.
Awesome. And hey, I'm Courtney Ridenhour. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm also a rising second year at Fuqua, and co-president along with Maddy of the Marketing Club there. So we just want to start off by thanking you all for joining us for the 6th episode of the new Demon Live series. We're really happy to have all of you here for this hour and hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. I do just want to note that we are recording this Zoom session and it will be posted on the Demon Lounge in the coming days.
And we want to send a special thank you to Duke in LA, Duke in New York, Duke Arts, Duke Alumni, Duke Marketing Club, and the Duke MBA Marketing Club for collaborating on this episode. We received dozens of questions submitted by the audience and from students and alumni attending this panel. So we will not be taking live questions this episode. All of the questions have been predetermined.
We're also going to post the panelists' emails in the chat, so you guys are free to follow up with them directly afterwards. And to start, we're just going to go around and ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we're going to dive into the questions. So I'll just say your name so you guys know what order to introduce in. First, we have Ashley A.
Hi guys, I'm Ashley Alman. I'm in Los Angeles, California, and I currently work at Netflix as a manager for creative marketing for a comedy series.
Great. Next, we have Betty.
Hi everyone, I'm Bette Ann and I'm currently in New York, originally from Atlanta, and I'm the Director of Influencer Marketing and Entertainment Events at Lyft.
Cool. Cassie.
Hi, I'm Cassie Goldring. I graduated in 2015. I'm a partnerships manager at Condé Nast for events, so we work across all the brands and do sponsorships.
Thank you. Ashley H.
Hi guys, I'm in New York. I work at the New York Times now, so I'm managing director for growth marketing. So it's my job and my team's job to basically lead marketing to get people to subscribe and not cancel on us.
Thank you. Samantha.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm class of 2015. I'm in New York and I work at Facebook as a client solutions manager for the entertainment industry.
Sam. Next we have Timi.
Hi everyone, my name is Timi Lewis. I'm also in New York. I'm originally from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I'm a communications person. A few years back, I launched my own firm, Lewis Media Company. So I'm the founder and principal, and I'm always looking to promote small businesses, and that's sort of what keeps me busy.
Very cool. Detavio.
Detavio Samuels here in New York. Currently president at iONE Digital, which is a digital publishing company focused on multicultural consumers, in the midst of a transition to LA, where I'll be working at Revolt, which is a cable network focused on hip hop, running all the creatives and the content folks there. I want to give a shout out to my boy, Stephen Wyndham, who I saw somewhere in this room somewhere.
Thanks. Drew.
Hi, Drew Neisser, founder, CEO of Renegade. I have the distinct honor of being the senior member of this group, but also have over 25 Duke interns have come through my company in the last 2 decades, which is way cool. Launched a lot of marketing careers. I am a podcaster. I have 187 episodes of Renegade Thinkers Unite. I've written a book called Renegade, whatever it's called, CMO's Periodic Table. And I see one of the most amazing opportunities ahead of us as a result of this pandemic. And I have formed a secondary company focused on chief marketing officers as a result of the needs that they have right now.
Wow. Thank you, Drew. And last but not least, we have Emma.
Hi, my name's Emma. I work in content partnerships at TikTok, and I'm also based in Los Angeles.
Okay, that's everyone.
Awesome. So thank you all again for being a part of the panel. We're really excited to have you here, and let's get to it. So to start us off, I think we'd like to hear a little bit about what it's been like working from home during this time. How have you all had to kind of adjust how you're working with teams or clients or partners? And if you have an example of how a project has been impacted, that would be great. So Samantha, could you start us off, and then we'll go to Bette Ann?
Definitely. So I think first of all, I'm like really grateful to work at Facebook during this time because they were actually one of the first companies to let us work from home, which was just great in terms of just feeling safe. But also part of working at Facebook is they had a lot of the tech in place to really be in a good state when all these changes were happening to work from home. I think just from a logistics perspective, it's really forced us to be more organized in how we are as a team. So scheduling times for brainstorms and syncs instead of swiveling our chair around, which is what we would normally do. But I think also from a strategic perspective, we've had to be really empathetic for our clients because they're facing headwinds in their business and understanding that their marketing may shift as a result. But the plus side of that is we've been able to really think more long-term about how we can make things easier and simpler for our clients. So one thing we're doing now is building a playbook on how to launch streaming services in international markets, which will kind of be plug and play for all of the clients that we work with. So it's been really cool to work on longer term projects like that that might have taken the back burner had it been business as usual.
Bette Ann?
Yeah, so Lyft is obviously headquartered in San Francisco, but there's a really big office here in New York. But I'm actually the only one on my team that is based here in New York. And so for the past 2+ years that I've been at Lyft, like I've actually really been working from home a lot. Like because I travel so much to LA and to San Francisco, that when I'm home, like I want to be home and I get to work from home. So it hasn't really been a big adjustment for me. I think as a company, it's been a really big adjustment. I'm sure a lot of you probably heard 2 weeks ago, Lyft had massive layoffs. We laid off 17% of the employees. So I think personally, like it did affect my team. And so it has been really challenging. I think from a work point of view though, so I'm obviously responsible for entertainment event partnerships, which those have come to a screeching halt. No Coachella, no Pride, no Emmys. So the way that I'm thinking about like IRL experiences is completely changing. On the influencer side of things, which is the other responsibility that me and my team have, influencer marketing has never been more important than right now. At Lyft, our mission is to improve people's lives with the best transportation. And through a program called Lyft Up that we launched earlier this year, we are really giving transportation to those in need. So during COVID, we've been giving free bike share memberships. We own the largest bike shares across the nation, like City Bike in New York. We've also been providing transportation of medical supplies and meals. And so in order to really amplify that, we have had to turn to our influencer community and celebrity community to talk about it. And like transparently, we don't have any budget to do that right now. And so it's really been relationship based. So, having everybody from Gwyneth Paltrow to Justin Bieber talking about the work that we're doing, all without paying them, has been an interesting pivot.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for talking about how you've kind of really had to rethink how you work in your daily routine throughout this crazy time. So going on to the next question, this is directed towards Cassie and Ashley A. So getting your foot in the door to work in this industry can be challenging, and we kind of wanted to know what advice you have for students and or alums to break into this industry, especially during this time. So do you have like specific advice, given that this like marketing industry usually hires in the spring, and what students should do, or kind of just how to get your foot in the door, especially at this moment?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. And Ashley, it's funny our paths never crossed because I was at the New York Times before this. So I'm sad that we never met, but I think like to Bette Ann's point, this is a really interesting time, and I also work in events. You know, I think like industries have been flipped upside down and everyone is trying to adapt. I know for Condé, we've pivoted to virtual events, and now we're sort of taking a step back and realizing that, you know, once the world does go back to normal, virtual events are still going to play a huge part in those IRL experiences because people are getting so used to communicating this way. And I think it's just, people are going to have a little bit of PTSD, to be honest. And I know it's so hard already, I think, for students who are graduating to think about how they're going to enter the workforce. And now they're faced with this extra challenge of, you know, people are being furloughed and fired. How am I going to get hired at this time? And I think that, like, honestly, use this period to your advantage to really talk to people. Everyone is at home. People have a lot more time on their hands. Maybe someone who is in a senior leadership position who you never thought would be attainable to have a conversation with would be more open to speaking with you because they have more time. And I think just like really digging into the Duke network and cold emailing people on LinkedIn and just trying to get people on Zooms or get people on the phone and establishing those relationships now, because they're only going to serve you better once things start sort of like transitioning back to normal. And I think, you know, the Duke network, I cannot say enough, like how much Duke alumni want to help other people. I've already spoken to a few people on the phone during this time, you know, block out my calendar to have some calls. And I think just really like using this time to figure out what you want to do. I think the other piece of this would be that don't be afraid to just get your foot in the door, take a role just to sort of like, you know, even if it's at your dream company and it's not the dream role that you would want, you know, if it's a first job out of college and it's, you know, you're in the mailroom where I was in an agency and I was like, I graduated from Duke, why am I delivering mail? But it's all about building relationships, getting your name out there, and then slowly, you know, you learn so much from those experiences, but you're already in the company and it's a lot easier to move. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Does Ashley A, do you want to answer that?
Hey. Yeah, I mean, I think my first piece of advice would just be to think outside of the box when you're thinking about where to apply. When I was a rising senior, I had final interviews for internships at the Today Show and Rolling Stone, and I was so psyched and so sure that the odds were in my favor, and I didn't get either of them. And so I ended up applying for an editorial internship at a think tank in DC. Definitely was not a place I was super familiar with before I worked there. I didn't really understand even what it meant to be an editorial intern at a think tank, but it ended up being a really incredible stepping stone for me to then be a political journalist at the Huffington Post. So, you know, when you're thinking about the landscape right now, sure, there are a lot of industries that are really hurting and probably scaling back, but there are a lot of places that are actually really eager to be hiring. State and local governments are having a really hard time figuring out creative ways to message exactly what's going on in the world. So they're going to be looking for creative thinkers and people in the marketing space. It's an election year. It's still happening. So there's definitely going to be a lot of opportunities there, if not different and more virtual opportunities, still opportunities. So definitely just think outside the box and you know, just like Cassie said, your first job isn't probably going to be your forever job. I think there's definitely a lot of pressure being a Duke student to kind of land that name brand credit in your first job, but you know, you really want to just be figuring out a way to sharpen the skills that are going to set the table for you to then pursue that job at the Times or Facebook or wherever you head next. And then the easy stuff that you can totally do, keep your LinkedIn updated, stay really active on social media, and never stop creating, because you know, it's obviously really nice to be paid to be sharpening your creative chops, but there's so much that you can do just from your home with your cell phone, both in the form of writing and recording, so have at it.
Thank you. I think I particularly resonate with the advice to just put yourself out there and not be afraid to cold call or try new things that you weren't expecting. I think even for those of us that are further along in our careers, that's really relevant advice as you think about where you want your career to go. So to kind of move in that direction, I'd be interested in hearing about from those who have had a variety of different roles in the marketing industry, how you ultimately decided to pursue the direction you did, and how this has compared to other roles you've had outside of the marketing industry, if you've had any. So let's start with Detavio.
Sure. So I don't think there's ever a thing of like where I've landed or landing on a direction. I think my goal in life is to be directionally accurate. And so I point myself in a direction. I keep trying to get tighter and tighter and tighter on what works for me. So when I was coming out of Duke, I wanted to be a CMO. That was the goal. And so I went to business school, and then first job was at Johnson & Johnson doing global marketing. Quickly decided there that I did not want to be a CMO. So I jumped over to the agency side where I led creative teams to develop super dope campaigns for big brands like Jeep and Walmart and US Navy, et cetera. And I had the time of my life for a while. And then at a certain moment in time, you guys don't want to see ads. Nobody wants to see ads. I realized that the product I was creating, no one wanted to see, and started to fall in love with this idea of branded entertainment and branded content, creating super dope content that people would choose to watch, choose to engage with, but that also delivered the brand message. And so for that, I moved to the media side, where their only job is to create content that people want to watch and want to engage with. And so I've been doing that for the last 6 years, running a team there. And so even now in this next transition, it'll be my first time at a TV network, right? And I only run creatives and content creators and marketers. So anyways, for me, it's like, it's just a journey and it's a path. For me, I'm always trying to identify what I don't want to do so I can do less of it, and what I do love to do so that I can do more of it. But for me, it's a lifelong journey of figuring it out. To answer the question about how it's changed, I would say I've probably, if there's one thread or like idea that's happened, I've just gotten closer and closer to the true content creator side. So at the marketing, when I was at Johnson & Johnson, I was leading an agency, right? You manage the agency relationships. When I was at the agency, I was leading the business, but didn't run the creative teams. Here at the digital media company, I lead a team of creatives who focus on branded content and creatives who focus on editorial and the content that we produce every day. And when I move to my next role, I'll just be leading a team of pure creatives. So I think the only thread that I can see in my career is that I've gotten closer and closer to just being fully engaged in the creative work. But other than that, I'm just trying to have fun and play and figure out what makes me excited every day. And when that changes, then I'll move to whatever's next.
I love that. Okay, Ashley Harding, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I've had a few different lives. When I was actually pre-med at Duke, which is a whole nother story. So right out of Duke, I actually went into healthcare consulting, so management consulting at Deloitte. And I'm from Atlanta, so I was based on the CDC engagement and did a bunch of like business solutions stuff there, not really healthcare stuff. And while I was there, I started doing some soul searching and realized I wanted to go to business school to kind of hit reset on my career. And in doing research, I ended up going to Kellogg School of Management. And in my research, I realized that marketing and brand management kind of would let me flex the same muscles that I did in consulting, but also be more creative and work with agencies and actually create products that people would buy. So post business school is when I really got into marketing. And then I've done a ton of different types of marketing since then. So right out of business school for my internship and right after, I went into traditional brand marketing, CPG. I did 2 years at Procter & Gamble. And there I learned brand strategy, managed agencies, managed a P&L, all that stuff, right? But then once I was there, I started realizing that digital was the way to go. And I continually kind of look for different challenges in my career. I personally was living in Cincinnati and buying everything online myself. So I realized I didn't want to be kind of at the beck and call of Walmart and Target as much anymore. So I ended up transitioning into digital and e-commerce, and I moved to New York and worked at Gilt.com, as well as RalphLauren.com. And that's when I really, really, really learned how to sell things online. and the kind of thought process that people go through to actually buy things online, from socks all the way to $10,000 handbags. And so while I was there, I had a great time, but wanted a more of a challenge as well. So now I've moved into digital subscriptions at the Times. Never did I imagine that I would be in media, but I just kind of keep following a new challenge. This is the most challenging marketing that I've ever done. Not only do I not have like basically a storefront to get people to like peruse and buy our product, everything has to be explained via digital. But also you have to make sure that people continue to come back to the site and read and ultimately retain. So never a dull moment at the New York Times. It's also the first time that I've ever sold a product that I don't manage, or, you know, I didn't create the pipeline, right? Like we're at the mercy of a news cycle and the newsroom. And I'm on the business side of the company. And so we let them do their thing and then find ways to market to people accordingly. In terms of differences, I would say that it's similar. I use the same skill set that I did in consulting, but it's much more fast paced because digital. And the cool part about being at the Times is everything is in-house. So I'm not necessarily managing or working with agencies. All of my creatives, media buyers, everyone, we all used to sit together on the same floor and get to work together, which is like super fun and cool and awesome.
Thank you guys. It sounds like you both had a lot of experiences within the industry. So it's great to hear about how your process kind of went on through the years and how the differences between the creative side and the business side have been for you guys. So moving on from there, this question is directed toward Drew and Timi. So many of you guys, not just Drew and Timi, have started your own companies and or freelanced. So what would be your advice for students or alumni trying to spearhead their own creative projects now or in the future? Drew, if you want to start, that'd be great.
I think you're on mute.
I'm good. Okay, there we are. Yes, well, why don't you go ahead, Timi?
Okay. You know, this is always a really interesting question, and my response is actually not very sexy because what I learned in the launch of my enterprise, Lewis Media Company, you know, I hit the ground running. I was really excited. I'd been working full time, and I had like a suite of clients that I had going into it, and that sort of begat other clients. And so I just started doing the work, you know, with nonprofits, with small businesses, you know, providing all sorts of communication services, some kind of event planning, marketing events, and the like. And I neglected to invest properly in the infrastructure. And so, you know, before long, I realized I was doing all of these different things. And so my big takeaway, if you remember nothing from what I might prattle on about, is that you're not Atlas and you're not meant to like hold up the world and do it all yourself. And there is an art and an intelligence and a way to maintain your sanity when you share the load with experts that aren't you. And so what I found was that I wish when I launched, I had spent a little bit more time prior to launch and even throughout the process of building up my infrastructure. And by that, I mean identifying, mapping out what it is I need done and who is best able to do it. You know, I remember I took like this business seminar that was through a small business agency outside of Columbia. I'm in New York. So it was just, you know, uptown as well where I am. And the instructor was like, you know, how many of you entrepreneurs are doing the books and you're marketing and you're your IT person and you're wearing all these hats, and everyone sort of proudly, oh, that's me. And she looks at us like idiots. And she's like, hey, you're not supposed to be doing all of this. This is not the highest and best use of your time. You should be building the business, reinvesting in the business. And so that's one of the things I would caution. So find yourself a good accountant, a good bookkeeper, if you can go that extra mile. You know, I've been taking all of these Squarespace seminars thinking I was going to develop my own website, you know, because I went to Duke, I can do these things. These are all lies. So I realized I was actually working on a project. It was based in DC. I was here in New York and I would travel back and forth. And one of the other vendors is a web producer. And I said, you know, I should hire Eugene. And so like, here we are working on this project, and technically I'm his boss, you know, sort of vendor of vendors. And then I hired him separately to build, you know, just a little splash page. And we're going to kind of work to build out the rest of it by the end of this year so that, you know, I could have a footprint while I was busy doing all these things. And he had like a really amazing process. And so kind of what I learned from that is, whereas you might have facility in a lot of areas, it doesn't mean you should do all things. And so, the things that I would say you really should focus on are, figuring out the suite of services you want to provide. Don't start off doing the universe of things you think you might want to do or have expertise in doing. I actually was at the Demon Conference, Amy, you'll be happy to know this. And I decided to not only just, do the echo chamber thing and talk to people that are similarly situated. I went to a session that was put on by a young woman who was an editor of documentaries. And she said something that I thought was so profound, and I'll share it again with you guys. And she said, it's fine to have all of this expertise, but you really need to be known for something. And sort of like instinctively, that, but it's nice to sort of have that restated, because sometimes it doesn't always come across as obvious as it should. But she had facility in production, in shooting, obviously in editing, since she was doing that primarily. But she said that in her experience, networking, living in LA, it made sense to be known for something, and then you can regale the world with the rest. So I just want to impart some knowledge to you. Get your infrastructure house in order. I would start with the accountant. If you need to do a lot in social, and because that could be, that's its own profession. Like, it could be a major time suck for an entrepreneur, and I'm a solopreneur. I normally work with 1099s when I need to crew up. But get somebody to help you develop that content and then help with the distribution. Don't think that you need to be Atlas and hold up the world. And really think about the highest and best use of your time, which is building the business, figuring out the suite of products and services you want to offer, and just sort of marketing yourself, reinvesting in yourself, and repeat.
Thanks,
Love
Timi.
that.
That's really practical. Drew,
Yeah. Sure.
Hard lessons got to be good for something, right?
Yes, exactly. So I actually had the advantage of starting Renegade with another company, and so it wasn't my money. So I could make almost every mistake in the book on their money. And I didn't actually end up buying Renegade from Dentsu, the big agency that we founded the company with, until 15 years after we had already got going. The key part of Renegade was that we were just going to be a non-traditional agency. That was all we started with. And it evolved, it proved to be a very nice name. But I love so anyway, in 2008, just to give you a sense, that was very much like this moment. 3 things happened to me. I bought the company. We went into the worst recession since 1929, and maybe this one. Then $500,000 we were supposed to be paid didn't get paid because of the Madoff scandal. And 70% of our business walked out the door with one client. So essentially started again in 2008. And that was a wonderful experience and a chance to sort of learn what you love. And one of the things that's different about me is we had at one point 100 people at Renegade. I am the happiest person I've been in my career. We have 9 people. But the difference is we kind of know what we're good at. And when I said, I love your point about known for something, I've invested the last 10 years getting to know chief marketing officers. I've interviewed now over 400 and built up tremendous goodwill among them, my podcast, my Ad Age column, and so forth. And I actually find their job so amazing that in the middle of this pandemic, I said, you know what? I'm just going to start a therapy group for them. I started CMO huddles. I'm spending 5 hours a week just talking to groups of CMOs and helping them through this crisis. So if you think about what this means for you right now, a lot of businesses will be started and they will be amazing businesses because no one's going to hire. So the thing I would say is you have to dig deep right now and say, what do you really like? Because if you're a writer and you're not writing, you're not a writer. If you are an artist and you're not drawing, you're not an artist. So get those things, write those things on a card right now and say, oh, I'm a writer. Really? Did you write for an hour today? If you didn't, you're not a writer. Get that off the table. So that's part one. But if you are a writer or a filmmaker or something, yeah, make that stuff. And just start using that opportunity now. And then the other thing is hedge your bet a little bit. No matter what you do, you probably need to know the business side. So take advantage of this. All these places are now offering free courses. Demand Base will teach you account-based marketing. Take a course, get certified. Even if you want to be a creative director, get certified in something that involves data. You go, oh, wow, this person wants to understand the business, not just write something or create something. And then I guess the last thing is, don't expect others to get excited about your ideas right away. In fact, probably the better idea, the less likely other people will recognize it, because it won't look like something they've already done. So if you have something that you think is brilliant and you're not getting positive feedback, that could be a really good sign. Or it could be just a bad idea, but probably a really good sign. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Drew and Timi. I think we very much appreciate the advice on resilience and focus, and we will try not to be Atlas. I think that's probably good life advice. So our next question is for, sorry, lost my place. Our next question is for Emma and Bette Ann. So Emma, you're working in content partnership at TikTok, which is certainly a growing platform itself. And Bette Ann, you've worked across a number of brands in your career. So how do you approach brand building, and how does that approach shift across clients or brands? And Emma, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, so I very much work in the creator talent space. And so for me, building a brand is about building a personal identity and being really clear about who you are, whether it's on one platform or across everything you're doing. I also came from the mailroom world, so I heard somebody talk about that earlier. And so I came from a traditional Hollywood talent agency, and I've really pulled that experience over to TikTok, where before we were talking about the entire career of a traditional actor, actress, and all the things that go along with that, endorsements and their digital presence and being a part of podcasts and all that stuff that all accumulates into their personal brand. And I've brought that over to TikTok, where, a lot of our creators are TikTok native and they're just starting out to build their personal brand. And how is TikTok going to play a role in that? And how are they going to venture off TikTok and turn it into other things is a huge part of our day-to-day. So, yeah.
Cool. And on my side of things, so I think what's interesting about my career is that I've actually always worked on brands that aren't as established. And so you're probably thinking Google, super established, but while I was there, I worked on Google Plus, which was a startup. I worked on it right from the beginning. I also launched Pixel 1, Pixel 2, and that also was basically, our startup in the phone world at the time. And then Lyft, when I came to Lyft just over 2 years ago, also it was still very startup-y and, almost like the underdog. So I think my approach to brand building has actually been similar across both of them. And how I think of brand building is, of course, in the influencer space. And so what's been most important for me in the roles that I've worked in is really building a community of brand advocates. So at Google, I created the first ever micro-influencer community, and that was before micro-influencers was a buzzy word. And I've really done the same thing at Lyft as well. And then also both at Google and Lyft, I've helped really create experiences for influencers so that they can interact with the brand in a really fun, playful, never been done before way. And they can really walk away from those experiences understanding the brand's message. So I think a good example of this at Lyft, again, super mission oriented brand. Last year, we had a big campaign around immigration, and we really took a stance on immigration. And, talking about immigration with influencers can feel kind of heavy-handed. So we needed to come up with a way that was, that we could get our message across, but it wasn't that heavy-handed. And so we partnered with The Infatuation, which for those of you that don't know is a foodie media outlet, kind of like the authority on, the hottest restaurants in various cities. And we hosted a dinner series across the country in 3 cities where the dinners were hosted at immigrant-owned and operated restaurants. And so through these dinners, we were able to tell our brand message, as well as like really have storytelling from the owners of the restaurant. And influencers walked away with a clear perception of what it is that they can do to really take an action. And they really understood what Lyft is doing to take an action. So I think, just to circle it back, brand building with influencers is all about like really building that community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Both of your experiences were very relevant to that question, so that was really helpful. So moving on to the next question, kind of circling back to this whole pandemic thing. So Timi and Ashley A., how do you think the impact of the pandemic will affect the future of the industry, and what shifts are you already starting to see?
I'll start because I think Ashley A. is going to have lots of hopeful things to say. Hey, Ashley. Let's see, almost immediately I saw that, projects were getting reimagined, either the contract terms were being renegotiated or put on pause in some way. It's a couple opportunities that were, I was about to close, dried up. One dried up completely, one was punted down the road while the client tried to figure out what this pandemic actually meant for them. They do a lot of work with brands, including some CPG brands, but it was so early that it was hard to say what folks would actually do. And so, we couldn't sign the dotted line on the contract. So for me as a communicator, doing things from public relations to some event management, it's been a curious time. And what I'm finding is that I have to dig into my most creative self. Like there was the initial shock, just like, oh my God, woe is me, this is the worst time. What are we gonna do now? Obviously life will go on. 100 years ago, when that last pandemic took place, we moved on, we're all here now. So that's proof of life. But what can I do to be kind of creative? And I sort of thought back to my Duke days and how you had to kind of make a way out of no way at times, just to really, when the world was yours and you had nothing but potential that you were hoping to realize, what are some of those ideas and characteristics and things that motivated me? And I think those same characteristics are going to be at play now when you're trying to figure out the unknown. And that's what this whole pandemic life that we're living presents itself. And so I thought, how could I be resilient and tenacious? I had to sort of think very creatively about what I could do next. I had to also have a lot of patience, and kind of follow some of the advice I've heard echoed here about try new things and don't let perfect get in the way of good, and sort of just give it a shot. If it doesn't work, you can pivot quickly, you can move on. It's a pandemic, nobody's going to really fault you. And another thing that was interesting is that I had to just sort of remember to stay hopeful that, whether or not we're all in this together, we're all in the pandemic. And so at some point it will come to its conclusion, and, just hoping that it'll, my company will be stronger as a result of it. And so some of the things I'm doing to kind of manage through, since we are still in the midst of it, is to really think about my core competencies. And so for all the MBA folks, I have a master's in public policy, not an MBA. But, thinking about what it is I have to offer, what is the highest and best use of my talents, my expertise, all this experience I've had since graduating from Duke, and thinking, staying true to my core, but using the variable of how I might apply it differently to kind of be what excites me. So maybe I go after different types of clients. Maybe I have to repackage some of my skills. Maybe I have to take a longer term view to some projects as opposed to maybe a shorter term view. Maybe it's more about positioning myself as a partner and not just, a vendor or somebody that's taking a transactional kind of approach, and really think about how I might future-proof my company so that when the next major economic downturn happens, I've got some built-in resiliency. And some of that, to Drew's point earlier, is to have a contingency plan. I think we all went through this period where everyone was like, don't have a plan B, make yourself go out and do something. I think we need to have like a plan A through Z. And so that's sort of what I'm doing real time in terms of recasting my core competencies to be applied to different types of clients, especially clients who are going to have the money to spend, because communications at a time like this really comes across as a nice to have or a luxury item as opposed to an investment. And so, you know, you may or may not change hearts and minds, but, you know, all I can do is control my actions. And I think part of that is being creative and resilient and tenacious, staying hopeful, and thinking differently about how I can add value, especially to people who are willing to pay for it.
Thank you. That was full of great advice. So Ashley.
You know, I think in a lot of ways we're going to kind of continue on a trend that we were already on. It's just kind of at hyper speed, and that's that the highest production value marketing campaign is not the one that rises to the top. People like to be marketed as they are and where they are, and it's why we've seen so much success on platforms like TikTok. And you know, people are so much more excited about someone in a baggy sweatshirt doing a fun dance than they are somebody in like dressed to the nines, high production value, ring light. So when we're thinking about marketing for our campaigns now, you know, we're doing a lot more at home self-taping, cell phone capture stuff. We're getting really creative and nifty in that way. But yeah, I think it's really just leaning into more the most creative and innovative idea rather than the glossiest and most expensive idea. And I think when it comes to hiring within the industry, it's going to mean looking at qualities like flexibility and curiosity and eagerness to break the mold more so than it is going to be looking for, you know, a master's degree in marketing or, you know, no, obviously there's a lot of value in that too. I know a lot of you here are pursuing that. But, you know, it's going to be a lot of kind of this like hunger and tenacity that you get really out in the fields.
I love hearing that the hunger and tenacity is important. And I think kind of ties into the next question where I think we're interested in understanding how you all stay inspired as a professional and how you keep building up that that hunger for the next thing. And so I will go first to Ashley Harding and then Drew, but what books or films you know, inspire you? What are the resources online or otherwise that you recommend Duke students check out to keep developing skills and knowledge and to stay inspired in their careers in marketing?
Yeah, so I had to think about this one because I haven't read, you know, technical marketing books in quite a while. I think what I currently do and a lot of my team currently does, which is helpful, is number one, I think that if you kind of know what specific area of marketing or media or creative, whatever that is that you're interested in, get to know more, not just like the competitive set, but like other categories. So for a while now, I've been selling things online, multiple types of things, right? Well, now I guide my team to look outside of the rest of like our news publishers, the rest of our competitors. Literally, think about the hard things to sell online. It's really hard to sell makeup online, fragrance, cars, like those types of things. So I'm always looking outside of the category to stay fresh, to see how people are basically using digital to their advantage. Another thing that we do that I think would actually be cool for students to do is get together with your marketing, media, entertainment, creative friends, create your own little like chat group. We have a Slack channel at work that we all, like as we're living our normal lives, add to, whether we see different articles, different campaigns, and we actually have pretty fun, interesting conversations about it. It keeps you on your toes. You're able to keep a pulse on what's going on. While it's fun, it doesn't feel like a big homework assignment or an extra thing for all of us to do. And you can go back and reference it later.
So wonderfully practical. As I was thinking about this, so I'm going to put it in two buckets. One, on a practical side, if you're thinking about sort of your personal brand and as a marketer, and you want to develop that as possibly being like Timi as a solopreneur and entrepreneur, a great book to read is called The Business of Expertise: How Entrepreneurial Experts Convert Insight to Impact. It's by David C. Baker. And I guarantee you any marketer will learn from this, because it's really about focusing on the getting really, 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 really knowledgeable about one thing, which is funny because I'm knowledgeable about two things: chief marketing officers and Ben Franklin. And I'm knowledgeable about Ben Franklin because I consider him America's first chief marketing officer. And so there was language that he used, which is well done is better than well said, which inspired the last 13 years of my career. It's all been about what are the actions that marketers can do, not what they say, but what they can do. But I've managed to pull these things, two things together, Ben Franklin and chief marketing officers. My third book will be about Ben Franklin and what he is doing. So the point of both of that book and that story is you got to look inward and say, what's the thing you're going to get most excited about? I was watching a speech today by a gentleman who was talking about a dentist, and the dentist couldn't figure out how to differentiate him. So the advisor said to him, well, what's your passion? He said, well, I like to skateboard. The guy goes, well, there it is. You're the dentist who skateboards. He put skateboarding all over his website. He's got skateboarding stuff all over his thing, and his business skyrocketed because he got his passion and his work together. So as you're developing, and if you look at TikTok, that's what that is. It's like there's sort of the confluence of that. But find that passion and express it deeply, like crazily, as your own personal brand. And don't be afraid to put it on your LinkedIn profile. So for me, the other part of the inspiration is I have never opened the Fast Company, whether the print or the website, without coming up with an idea for a client. Never happened. So I always find that amazing. So those are two sort of broader perspectives.
Well, thank you guys so much. Ashley, that's really cool what you said about the fun Slack that you guys have going. And Drew, if you want to put the name of the book you mentioned in the chat.
I can do that.
Super helpful.
Sure.
So thank you guys for that. Moving on. So this question is for Samantha and Cassie. And it is, what are some of the ways that you guys applied your Duke experience in and out of the classroom, whether it be classes or extracurriculars? How did you apply that to your current job, and what opportunities or resources do you guys suggest that students take advantage of while they're still at Duke?
Definitely. Cool. I can start with that. So I think, when I was at Duke, the course I took didn't really make linear sense at the time, but everything I did kind of ladders up to what I did today. So that's all to say, it's okay if you're going through Duke and your major isn't what you want to be. So I actually was a public policy major, and I work in marketing for Facebook with streaming clients. So how does that even relate? First off, Stat 101, everyone on this chat, if you haven't taken it, 100% should take it before you graduate. I didn't do well in it, but it's the class that I use every single day in my job. You have to be able to interpret data in a really smart way in order to make good decisions about marketing campaigns, especially on digital. So understanding how to interpret brand lift results is so critical to my job. So if you haven't taken that, do that. It's like the spinach that you might not enjoy eating, but it's really good for you. And I think, from a more fun perspective, I did the Duke and Silicon Valley program, and getting exposed to companies on the West Coast. I'm an East Coaster. I had done my junior year internship at a CPG company, and seeing all these disruptive companies, meeting alums out in the Bay Area is what really kind of, set me forth on my path to want to work at Facebook. And I think the other thing is make sure you're doing things you're passionate about too. I took a lot of documentary and film classes while I was at Duke that had nothing to do with my major, and I didn't even get a minor in it. But working in entertainment and being able to reference all these old films and having a lot of passion about them comes through in the role in terms of connecting with clients and having something that you know a little bit about to talk about. So I think those would be my three things.
Cool. Thank you. I am also a pub major, and I'm glad to hear you use Stat 101 because it's definitely not my most favorite class, but I'm glad it's useful.
Every day.
Okay, Cassie, do you want to speak to that as well?
Whenever a Duke student or I get this question, there's one thing I always say, which is take the pressure off and just use Duke to learn. I think that, you know, a lot of my friends, if you're going on a finance track, it's a little bit different because there are certain things that you need to do in order to get those jobs. But from a creative perspective, like, I've had so many jobs, honestly. And then I look back and realize like how this job opened a door for the next one. And like, it sort of all makes sense in retrospect. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. For a second, I was going to be a poli-sci major. I somehow ended up being a literature major. And the reason I picked that was there was no film major at Duke. I was really interested in that. At the time, there was not a lot of resources for creative arts and that type of career path. So I sort of just honed in on like what my interests were, and lit was global cultural studies. So anything that had to do with culture counted, and everything has to do with culture, women's studies, visual media studies, documentary studies. So in a way I was able to like create my own major. And I was really interested in like the implications of technology on society. So I was able to pick classes that sort of went along in that theme, and they all had to do with culture. But at the same time, I really loved journalism. So I ended up doing the journalism media studies certificate. And looking back now, you know, my senior year, I did a independent study in screenwriting because I wanted to try that. And like, it was so awesome. I got to take all the really cool classes with all the amazing professors. And I feel like I got the most out of my Duke experience. And I've actually had this conversation with a lot of my friends who did Econ 101 and just felt pressure, like they had to go on a certain track in order to get a certain job. And they're like, you know what? I missed out on taking that like really cool history class that I always wanted to take. And in the end of the day, they ended up leaving their finance job to go work at a startup. So all that being said, like, take the pressure off. What you study at Duke and what your major is isn't necessarily what you're going to do. And it all sort of finds a way of connecting itself. Like, I started out in the entertainment industry, and then I worked at a tech startup, and then I worked at the New York Times in journalism doing experiential sponsorships, which is sort of like the intersection between entertainment and journalism. So I'm like, okay, well, everything I did at Duke sort of like came together. So I think that's just the biggest piece of advice, is just use Duke to like explore different interests, because most likely, you know, you may switch careers throughout your life, and like use Duke to your advantage, because there's a lot of cool stuff here.
Thank you both. I just want to second a couple of things that you guys said. Just so everyone's aware, my background is in advertising, and part of the reason I came back to business school was to sharpen up on my data analytics skills. So if you have the opportunity to take that course, do it. I also came from a liberal arts background and took a lot of courses in a lot of different areas, and it's amazing kind of what can inspire creativity. So you can really look to that for a lot of things. So I think this will be our last question tonight. So as many of us know, reaching out to alumni can be a bit intimidating, and the current situation is probably compounding that. So with that in mind, Detavio and Emma, how do you recommend students and alumni approach staying in touch with alums about career opportunities during this time? Of course, respecting the fact that many people may be facing difficult challenges right now. So Detavio, we'll start with you.
Sure. My simple idea is just reach out. What I believe is happening is, look, executives and people at the top have always been busy. My experience is that, me personally, I'm actually less busy than I've ever been. So coming into COVID, those first 4 weeks were terrible. Cost cutting, scenario planning, all of that. I was working, felt like 24-hour days. But that said, now that things have settled down, so much of my time was occupied by people seeing me in the office and having conversations. Now that they can no longer see me, I've gotten so much of my time back. So it will still be true that you will reach out to a bunch of the people at the top who are super busy, but I do believe there's a new set of folks who actually have less work on their plates today than they did before. And so reach out, reach out, reach out. The only other thing that I'll add is, one of the things, specifically if you're like Gen Y, Gen Z generation, we've always talked about how when you want something from someone who's a position that you have, figure out what you can offer them. I believe that Gen Y and Gen Z are uniquely positioned to be helpful to people at the top. specifically this digital divide. They don't understand TikTok or know where TikTok is. They've never been on Instagram Live. There's so much that young people can do to contribute to the well-being at work of people who are, 40 and 50 and 60. And so my 2 points are, I'll keep mine short, reach out and find a way to add value. By the way, those people who are adding value to me through this period are going to be the first people I look forward to hire when things ease up. And so it's also just a great strategy for kind of how to get in ahead of the curve. But we need you, right? We need young, smart, brilliant thinkers to tell us what we can't see. And so I think that's the opportunity that exists, uniquely exists for this generation.
My big piece of advice is going to be to make relationships when you don't need them. So, even if you see somebody that has a really cool job, but you're not interested in working at their company right now, make the relationship now so that 3 years down the road, you can reach out and, hey, I talked to you when I didn't need something and now I need something. So make sure that every person that you reach out to is not somebody that you're just trying to get something from. Talk to as many people as you can. Like everyone said, people have extra time right now. So it's a great time to really widen your net on who you're reaching out to and reach out to the people that you don't need something from right now. This is really relevant if you're like a recent alum and you're not looking to change your job right now. Go ahead. You need to still be networking and reaching out to alums. Another thing I would say is I've had a lot of students reach out to me and about specific job postings, and I am always willing to put my neck out for Duke students, and sometimes I'll ask for the resume and also, I'll say, send me your resume, and also we'll set up some time to talk, and they will send me their resume and the job listing and sort of drop the ball on actually talking. And you have to put in the time and actually make the relationship and have the conversation. Like, I'm not just going to never talk to you and put your resume up for something. So don't try to, I know it sucks to talk on the phone with people, and it's like scary and you're introverts and all of that, but you need to set the 30 minutes to talk to a person, and then they can be in your corner for the rest of your life.
Great, thank you guys. So I lied earlier. I think we're going to try and do one last question. So very quickly, I think, and I'm going to start with Bette Ann and Samantha, but I think we can maybe open this up to everyone else. But what is one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give yourself earlier in your career?
There's so many. So I think a lot of them have been touched on, where, people have changed careers and changed their paths. I think for me personally, my first job out of college, I was a producer in an advertising agency for 3 years, and I got laid off. And it was the most earth-shattering moment of my career. And I think all of us coming from Duke, we've been, top of our class, been, given almost everything that we've wanted at our fingertips. And so for me, that was just such an eye-opening experience. But if it wasn't for that experience of me getting laid off, I would not be where I am today. I wouldn't have gotten a job at Google. I wouldn't have gotten a job at Lyft. And so I think, you always have to just keep in the back of your mind, if one door closes, another one's going to open. And that's the way that, you were supposed to go.
Yeah, I think mine is honestly kind of similar to that. I think they have posters all over the walls at work at Facebook, and there's one that I really like that's, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I think especially as a senior for me, I had probably 5 final round interviews and got rejected from every single one of them before I got Facebook. And I think had I been operating from a place of fear, I might not have put in my resume at Facebook, or I might have second guessed wanting to go into a media job. And I think, throughout your career, even your life, you're going to be faced with setbacks and challenges, but you always have to operate, I think, from a place of optimism and believing in yourself and proceeding with the harder path if you know ultimately that it's what's right for you.
I'll jump in. I'd say there are 2 things that I wish I did earlier. I wish I wrote more earlier on, because you really don't understand until you write it down. And even if you're just new in the industry, just writing stuff down. And then number 2 would be ask the question more often, how can I help you? to everybody I run into, which is what I do now. And it's kind of a great thing.
I love that one for Drew, the last one. I definitely do that as well. My two quick ones are take risk, especially while you're young. It gets much more difficult to do when you're married and you've got kids and all of those things. So now's the time to take your shot. So maybe that big job at the investment bank is not what you want, right? It's the time to not be afraid and jump out there and see what you can do. And then the second one is just learning that goals only serve me to be directionally accurate. Right? You just don't know what you're going to be or what you're supposed to be or what you want to do. It's a thing you have to learn as you go through life. So goals just give me direction. If you say you want to be a millionaire by 30 versus a millionaire by 50, you make very different decisions, right? So goals kind of give me direction and timing. But outside of that, my job is just to stay as open as possible so that I can see the things that come across my path that set my soul on fire or excite me, because you never know at 21 who you're supposed to be at 60. So I shouldn't even pretend. I stopped pretending a long time ago. Those are my two.
I can say mine quickly. I think you guys all sort of touched on this. Mine is definitely like everything happens for a reason. You know, I worked for a startup that ended up going under, and I was unemployed for a period of time, which was terrifying, especially as a Duke student. And, you know, I interviewed similar to Sam, and I thought that, you know, this is my dream job. I'm going to get it. I got to the final round, didn't get it. Ended up at the New York Times, which changed my life and the trajectory of what I wanted to do. So, you know, in hindsight, I know this is like so cheesy, but you always realize why things happened. And to Betty's point, like when one door closes, another one opens. I think the other one would be is like not being afraid to speak up for yourself, and to, I think, like constantly reminding yourself that the worst thing that can happen is someone says no. If you have a really creative idea, say it, because I think sometimes you, in your head, you're like, this is not a good idea. And then you realize as you're starting to say it that no one else in the room thought of it. So just take risks. And if it's not good, then you'll find out, but you might as well try.
I'm glad that we're recording this, because this is all great advice and I can't like write quickly enough. A, and B, my penmanship is terrible because we all type. But my contributions would be, and I actually sort of followed this advice, you know, shortly after I graduated from Duke, is not to overthink things. And it's sort of funny how things come full circle, because I'm reminding myself that it's also good at this juncture in my career to not overthink things. You know, I was pre-med in college. You know, I was going to be a cardiovascular surgeon. It was all mapped out. And I realized how much I really disliked certain classes. Like, you know, there's no pain without gain. And it's not just about the destination, that the journey in being pre-med mattered. And I didn't like the journey. Duke was expensive. And I decided I'm only taking classes I wanted. And in that way, I was already breaking the mold of not always being so prescriptive of what I was doing, like sort of taking an opportunity, being a little opportunistic, essentially, not knowing how it's all going to pan out, but recognizing that you're following your interests. But one piece of advice I would give to my younger self is, you know, I've sort of been a generalist, sort of my career kind of called for being a generalist, but I think at some point it's good to commit and really get that expertise so that you can be known for something, so that you can go deeper, so that you can be the go-to person who is so indispensable. And, you know, part of that is, they call it finding a niche, following your passion, whatever you call it. Just recognize that for all of your many interests, you know, you really want to have some hardcore skills. So I love all the advice that people are giving about, you know, taking courses and, you know, getting a stronger relationship with data and how you can actually extract insights from data and not just sort of read, you know, spreadsheets or financial statements, but really being able to act on that because you were able to discern. So those would be my two bits, is that, you know, don't be so formulaic, kind of be a little transactional and follow things, but also recognize that over time, expertise is what people pay a premium for.
I can add one quick thing. I agree with everything that everyone has said. I was pre-med at Duke. I had no business being pre-med at Duke. So make sure you take the time to look into what your passion is and follow it, take the risk. But also, once you land in different places, be very intentional and strategic about the work that you do. Ask yourself kind of every day, every month, every quarter, am I doing cool things to add to my resume? I was able to kind of move around between various types of marketing and even industries, because I was consistently picking up skill set in strategy, data and analytics, creative strategy, that kind of thing. So if you're intentional and can always ask the question, how can I help? No matter where you are and you're building your resume, you can talk your way into another role at a different place because you've got the thinking and the skill set there.
I would say that, just like when we're marketing a series or a product, we're thinking about how we can position it as completely different and better than the rest. You should be doing the same when you're thinking about how to market yourself as a candidate for a job. Your unique background, identity, work experience are going to be huge assets. So when you're saying why you're qualified or thinking about your resume, don't try to present yourself as fitting in a box or, checking a list, but rather how will your unique perspective, your unique background actually be a really valuable asset to those who are looking to hire you.
Awesome. So thank you to all our panelists, all that advice, everything, all your answers were so incredible. We're so appreciative of you guys taking the time on this Tuesday night. It's Wednesday, oh God. So anyways, to wrap up, please join us tomorrow also at 8 p.m. for our next Demon Live episode on business of entertainment, law, strategy, and finance. More info is on the Demon Live site, which is posted in the chat. And remember to complete the form on the Demon Lounge to receive the Zoom link. Everyone, please stay safe, healthy, happy, and thank you again to all our panelists.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks to our moderators, too. Great job.
Thanks for bringing us together, Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Amy.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Stay safe and be well.